Creating an AI song playlist that tells a story. This time, we're going to be looking at the project overview, the objectives, as well as the process that we will be utilizing to create our AI song playlist, which is going to give a narrative about a story. So get ready and some coffee, because the rockin' ain't stopping once we start building beats with our AI app. Our objective is to create an AI song playlist in chronological order according to the major plot points of a known narrative, which could be historical events. We might take a historical timeline and make a musical narrative based on the major plot points of that timeline, or we can take a known text, such as our example, the Iliad, where we're going to be taking the major plot points of book 1 or chapter 1 of the Iliad in chronological order, creating a song list based on those events. Noting that we could be happy with just the playlist that we can use and create using AI song generation software, or we can take another step, making a video format, possibly using AI images to overlay the audio. And then we could look at something like this, which is on, say, a YouTube type of format, where we could upload it one song at a time in a playlist format, or we could have the entire playlist in one video where we can click through it. You can see the differences between the songs here. Now, if we add the images on top, then we can use some kind of AI image generator, which we'll get into later, and we can try to think about how much time we want to be spending on having multiple AI images that go along with the song and the animation. So that's going to be one thing that we'll talk about later. I'm going to try to shoot for somewhere in the middle of not having the AI images be too sloppy so we don't spend any time on it, versus I don't want to spend too much time where I'm trying to line up every image with every line of the song. We're going to be somewhere in the middle, choosing basically like 4 images per song, songs being like 3 to 4 minutes long. All right, so, and then I'm going to do some simple animation, but I think it's effective animation, zooming all the way in and all the way out. And so we'll get into that as one of the components. Now, note that if you are adding it to something like a YouTube, at the end of the day, you've got the question, which we'll talk about at the end of the process, which is, do we want to add just one video, or do we want to add a playlist? So we could export all of the songs and then put them in a playlist in something like YouTube, or we can do both, as we have done here. There's going to be SEO considerations, meaning how are things going to rank in YouTube and so on and so forth, which we'll touch on a little bit at the end of the process. So let's go back to the first tab. This is going to be the software we're going to use. Well, let's just list out what we need in order to do this process. We're going to need an AI song generation software. We're going to need an AI text kind of software like a chat GTP. And then if we want to add the images, we're going to need an AI image software. All of these have some free versions and some paid versions, basically. And we're going to need some kind of editing software in order to convert the music files, which will be in MP3 format, to the video files and add images on top of it and some animation, in which we will be using Camtasia. But the same process could be used with anything. You're just going to basically take down the music files and then add images on top of that. So once again, you have different versions of software, the process being much the same for any of them. So the software that we're going to use for the song generation, right now I've tested a few of them, and there's a few of them out there, and I'm liking the Suno. It's at suno.com. That might change over time. If it does, the process will be basically the same. It's the same kind of concept with the process. So if you want to try the process with different softwares, or if things change over time, who's going to win in this particular area of AI, I don't know. But I would think the process will be basically evergreen, given the fundamentals on how the AI software is basically working. So we're going to be using the Suno. So I'm liking that thus far. For the AI images, there's a lot of different options you could use out there. I'm currently using Midjourney. It's one of the premier, or one of the first ones that kind of got into the AI image domain. And now there's a whole bunch of them, some of them being free, some of them being paid for, so you can try different ones. But this is the one that we'll be using within the project, and I like it because I've been on and off this one. It's gone through some good times and bad times, but right now I'm really enjoying it because you can train the AI to like your personal style by doing some picking and choosing of images. So I can kind of customize the AI more. But it has a free version, but I think usually you might end up using the paid version if you make a lot of images. I won't get into the detail of that, but you got to pick an AI image generator if you want to make it into a video. You might also be able to use ChatGPT to create images if you're paid for ChatGPT. So if you're already paying for the 4 version, then you might be able to make images with it. It only makes 1 image at a time, however, and it takes a little bit longer than AI image generating software like a Midjourney, which creates 4 images per prompt, which I like a lot better. And then we're going to need some kind of text AI generation software in order to help give us the narrative of the process. You can use ChatGPT, which will be the main thing we're using. I'm also thinking I kind of like Perplexity. I've used a couple other kinds of these types of software. The thing about Perplexity is that it gives you some more references. So when you get the actual information, it references the text, which can make you a little bit more certain. However, I have also noticed that the references aren't always perfect. So the AI, if it's going to get something wrong, it gets the reference wrong sometimes, which is kind of annoying. If you're going to add the reference, I would like it to be correct. But a lot of times it is correct, and so so you might try that one out. All right, so let's go through. This is going to be the general So let me go over the objective again. Why would we want to do this? Well, if I go to the playlist here, then the idea would be whether it be a historical thing, a historical timeline, or whether it be a text. What would be really nice is, one, if I really like the text, like I did something on like the Old Testament, which has a lot of really, pretty crazy stories in it. And so you might know the text, but you want to basically hear songs based on it in chronological order, and that'll help. It'll just be interesting to help listen to the same kind of story, kind of like an opera would be the general idea, right? Be like an AI opera. The opera is trying to tell you a story in musical format, have some chronological order. Similar kind of process here. We're trying to create it, but we can create it in any kind of genre that we want, whether that be rock or whether that be country or whatever. So that might be one use for it, to listen to a narrative we already know to make enjoyable songs according to that narrative. That's a fun thing to do. It's also great for learning. So, and so it's particularly good in the format we'll be thinking of it here for learning things that are in chronological order. So if you're actually learning historical events, they can be quite dry if you look at just the events in a textbook. You don't really get any context on how people are feeling and whatnot, and that becomes kind of a problem. If you put it into a song format, the song format might be able to pull in some of the more context around it. And one of the reasons it can do that is because the AI software is going to know more than just the plot point that you put in it, because the AI software is fed, its brain has been constructed from known things, which includes historical events. So I'll talk more about that in a second. But the other one that I think this would work good in is if you're learning a text, and in particular text that, again, you can't engage with as easily, possibly one that was written in another language, such as the Iliad, which was written in Greek, not only Greek, but ancient Greek. So now it's translated into English, and it's in an environment we don't know, talking about gods we don't really know and whatnot. So it can be a little bit difficult to put our mind in that format. And possibly if I hear something in musical format, then again, that might help to give us kind of a different kind of feel for it. And I think the music can do that because, again, it's not just coming from the text. So let me talk about that a little bit more, why I think that's the case. Notice that if when we prompt something into an AI software, if it's in a known text, like the Iliad, because I think Iliad is open source, meaning it's available to anybody. You can get it basically for free, right? And same with historical events. And not only can you do that, but there's been so much stuff written about it because it's part of the classic works that there's a bunch of other stuff that's available about the Iliad and about historical events. If I had a like the World War I or II or something like that, and I'm looking at the chronological events, or the Great Depression or something, there's a ton of information about those events. And you would think, how do you build an AI generation machine? You feed it with all the stuff that is known. So anything that's known that I'm allowed to put into the system, that's what I'm going to feed it with. I'm just going to feed it with as much stuff as I can. That's going to include the texts in the Western literary canon that are open source texts, right? And it's going to include all of the narratives on it. Now, that's one of the cool things about like the Iliad, for example. I might not, if I just read the Iliad or like the Old Testament of the Bible, it's going to be difficult because, again, it's so distant from me and the language has been translated. But if I engage with the people talking about it to help me to understand the context, then that's going to make it it's going to open up the text for me, right? And all that information is in the AI system, you would think, right? Because that's what you trained the AI with. So when I give just a plot point of a song, it's not going to just tell me in 1492 that right. It's gonna actually tell you. The song's going to try to pull in the general talking points around the event, and then create an emotional song based on that, which again might give you actually more context. Now, the other thing that's great about if you have a song playlist like this, you can copy the text, which is on the right in this software, and I can paste that into like a ChatGTP and say, ChatGTP, give me in this case, the story in the Iliad that is supporting this song. So then I can actually confirm that the song is about the Iliad, and I can ask ChatGTP if the song is appropriate, the mood, the tone, the wording. How is it getting that idea of it? I didn't think about it that way, right? I didn't think about the emotions or what they were thinking in that context or whatnot when I just read through the story. And so you can prompt the story so you can listen to the song, and you can use the song to ask whether it's an appropriate tone and whatnot. And then, it could be a launching point for like research using the good old ChatGTP or whatever AI kind of software. So that's the other thing that I think it can be really useful to do. It's also quite useful, especially when you generate the images. Just making the playlist and doing the process is a good way to study, I think, because when you expect, particularly when you get to the images, you start to realize that you can't really visualize what's happening that well. And trying to make an image for it, even though you're just doing prompts, you could say, does that image make sense? That's not what I was thinking. And is that right? Right? Does that image fit what I'm doing? Right? And so I think it's a good study tool just to make the playlist. So that's going to be basically the rationale why I think it could be useful. The end product that we'll have here is we can copy the playlist here, and then you can actually provide it to people and listen to it on Suno, which is great. And you can then use it, of course, if you wanted to make something on a YouTube and add the images to make a more creative kind of thing with the video on it and whatnot in that format. So that's the end process. All right, so what are we going to do on the process? We're going to first find a major story points using AI like ChatGTP. So first I have to, of course, find the story that I'm going to use. It's got to be like a historical event or a major narrative. Now, you might say, I want to do a current narrative. Maybe you're a Brandon Sanderson fan. I kind of like Brandon Sanderson, makes some crazy stories. He's a current writer at this point in time. So his stuff is not open source. So I'm not sure that, like, if I went into a ChatGTP and I said, give me the major plot points of a Brandon Sanderson book, if it's going to do that or not, right? Because you have to pay for that book. So I'm not sure if it'll be on there for free. However, it might be. So you might test that out. And there's a whole lot of discussion about Brandon Sanderson books. So not only will this system, a ChatGTP, as well as the music software, would be trained, you would think, on anything that's free, right? So any of the discussion about the Brandon Sanderson books, you would think that those stuff would be fed into these systems, but possibly not the book itself, which is a problem. But you would think any open source book, meaning any classic then, like the Iliad, like Shakespeare, like any classic book, and particularly the books that might be in other languages that we have a difficult time getting, if they're open source, they're going to be fed into the mind of ChatGTP and the music software, you would think. Like if I'm trying to make a software that makes a song, you would think that I'm going to feed it with songs, right? But song format, but you would think, want to feed it with anything that's textual. I'm not sure exactly how the song format works. That would certainly be the case, you would think, with text software like a ChatGTP. It's going to know the book, right? It's not necessarily the case, by the way, when we get to the AI image software. The AI image software is going to be trained on images. So it's may not be able to translate the fact that I'm telling it a line from the Iliad to make an image specific to that line, because it hasn't been trained on text. It's been trained on imagery. So it's going to have a little bit more difficult for us to tie that out. But anything that's text, which would include the ChatGTP and the Iliad, I should be able to include major plot points if I'm choosing a text that is open source, and you can try it for other texts. So anything that's open source, right, would be a good thing, and that would be most stuff you might be learning in school or trying to relearn because you couldn't learn it in school because I was learning in school wasn't what I was there for. That's not what so I gotta learn it now, okay? So that's gonna be the idea. So anything that's so then that's the process. So then find a major story points. So and tell the AI to prompt a list of major plot points per chapter, but not sub-bullet points. So I'm going to ask the system, give me just the major plot points of the story, in this case, the Iliad. Now, I don't want any subplot points because I want to make it as easy as possible to copy that information and use it as my seed for the Suno software. Noting, I don't need to tell it, give me an emotional song, and then Hector was upset and he was angry, and then Paris was being a baby and whining because he's a wussy and blah, blah, blah. You don't need to tell it all that because it already knows all that. Because why does it know all that? Because it has access to the internet. So if I just tell it, give me a story about Paris having a duel or something like that, it already knows exactly where that is in the book, he would think. And it knows all the text and stuff around it in its AI brain. That's what it's going to use to make the song. So I should just tell it, this is the plot point I'm talking about. You make the song based not on me telling you what I think about it, but based on all the other stuff that's in your mind from what you've been fed. And then I can critique it and see if I think the song is good or if that's an appropriate song or whatnot, right? So that means that when I prompt it, I'm looking for the plot points, and I can just type that and say, just give me it under 200 characters, give me the major plot points of the text. And then I can copy the outline to the Word document. So I'm going to copy it over here. So here's the major plot points that it gave me. I'm going to call these the seeds that I'm going to use to prompt the AI software, right? And then I'm going to number those seeds as well, because that's going to be the number of the songs. Building this bit is important to do systematically, especially if you want to add it to the YouTube, because this is going to give us the timeline that we can then use to in the description in YouTube. Then make a song based on the story points. So then we can take each of these plot points, and that's what we'll use to generate the song. I'll take this plot point and I will use it to generate this song using a simple format. I'm not going to give it the actual text or the actual lyrics of the song. I'm just going to say, here's a general song about this particular thing that happened in a particular timeline, and I want you to then build a song around it. Now, you can choose different genres. I think the ones that the system is best at right now is country. So you might not like country, but I'm just saying the AI software is, I think, quite good at mimicking country. All right. So if you just tell it rock, it's pretty good at certain types of kind of like poppy rock as well. But it also has a larger range. So if I tell it rock, it might give me like a poppy rock kind of thing, or it might try to do some heavy metal thing all of a sudden. So you're kind of giving it more range to do whatever it wants to do. And if you're in the middle of a war or something like that, it might do some more like heavy metal stuff, which might be appropriate, but just be aware of that. If you do country, the variance, I think, is less, right? You can expect it to be pretty, fairly countryish standpoint. I've also tried country with acoustic guitar, and I think that's even more specific, which again, it does quite well. So then we can make the actual songs, and then it'll make typically 2 songs per prompt, does it very quickly. It's great. And then that'll give us and then as you create each song, copy and paste the new title before the line on the list used to prompt the song. In other words, when I create the song over here, it's going to create a name for the song. That's generated from the AI. It's kind of difficult to change. So I'm going to keep the name, but I also want to keep the prompt so that I know what I used to prompt it. So I'm going to go back to my list over here where I had the seeds, and I'm going to put the name before the prompt and after the number. And then once I add all these into my editing software, I can also add the timestamp of each song. So at the end of the day, I would like to add to my description the timestamp, the song number, the song name, and the song seed or prompt used to generate the song, so that when I listen to it again or someone else listens to it, they can copy this seed to get the backstory about it, or they can make their own song based on that seed. All right, and then what do we have? We have this format. So as you create song, copy and paste new title before will allow us, go through the song generator and add them to the playlist and the Suno.com software. Be careful to add them in order, lining up to the list. So once we create the songs in here, this is the generator, we'll then add them to a playlist, and the playlist is located in the library under playlist. And then, so this is going to be our Iliad songs in order. So then we'll have them in order over here, and we could stop there. That might be enough. And this is a great tool just in and of itself if I don't want the images, because now I've got the songs and I've got the text of the song. Even though I might not have the prompt, I have the text. And if I get the text of the song and copy it into like a ChatGPT, then I can ask where this is in the actual narrative, in our case of the Iliad, so that I can appreciate the song more and possibly ask questions to see if the song's tone and whatnot is appropriate according to what ChatGPT thinks and its AI mind about it, right? So that's going to be this one. Now, also note, I'm going to be also telling the system to say every line in English and Spanish, because I think it's also a great tool to learn another language. I've been trying to learn Spanish for, 35 years or something. I'm still not. This is what's going to make it work this time. I haven't learned it thus far, but now I have I have this tool, and this is the one that's going to make it work for me. So you might not need to do that, but I find it quite incredible that I can tell it to give me every line in English and then the same exact line in Spanish, and it can create a song where I still think it sounds good, even though it's repeating every line in English and every line in Spanish. So you can experiment with that. I think it's a useful tool to try to learn a different language, because you're getting each line almost, said one way and another way with the same voice. Like, it sounds kind of funny to use a country singer that's singing in English and then the same guy is singing in Spanish in like a country narrative song. Not that Spanish people can't do country. I'm just saying it seems like, it's a little, but it's cool. It sounds good. I really like it. But you might not want to use that, but I'm going to do that because I'm going to try to cram as much in as I can, right? So I'm going to try to say, I'm going to learn a narrative. I'm going to have a song that I can enjoy, I can work out with and whatnot, and learn the narrative as I do that. And I can practice Spanish at the same time. So I'm probably doing all those things not well instead of doing any of them good, but still, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to do everything at one time. Anyways, then go through the playlist and download. So then once we have the playlist, I can download all the songs. The next step is we'll download all the songs from the playlist if we want to then make it into a YouTube video by downloading the MP3 files. So we can download the MP3 files, and that will look like this here. So here are the MP3 files, and then I have to rename each file according to my list over here so that it'll be in chronological order. Otherwise, it'll be in alphabetical order according to the song. So I want to rename it so it's in order. I've got 15 songs. Then I can take these songs and add them into my editing software and add images on top of it. So that's what our next process will be. So then I'm going to say, okay, and then let's go back over here. So then go through the playlist and download just 2 songs for each. Okay. So to make them into music video, we can use the prompt and title to create AI images. So now I'm going to go over here and say, based on this information, I'm going to go to my AI generator, which I used Midjourney, which again, you can use whatever AI generator you want, but I'm going to use the prompt and the seed over here to actually generate the image. So I could just use the seed and just say whatever image it comes up with, that's cool. I'll do that. But remember that the Midjourney, although it's an AI generator, it's not a text AI generator. So unlike the music and the ChatGPT stuff, it hasn't been trained by the major textual narratives like the Iliad or historical events. I don't know how exactly they label the images that they put into the image generator, but so in other words, they're not going to have. It's not like everybody has drawn an image related to every line item of the Iliad and then uploaded it to the internet somewhere saying this is Hector, as his ankle is broken or something, or dragged around. And right, there's probably images of major events, but it's not as good at pulling up the exact image according to a textual narrative, whereas the text software is really good at that. So you might, just by putting the prompt in, get an image that's appropriate, or you might get an image that's way off. You're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And so then the question is, how much time do I want to spend on the AI images? So I think it's kind of fun to spend time here, because what I'll do is I'll actually listen to the songs, and then I'll copy the text over here of the song into ChatGPT and say, give me the narrative behind this song of this particular event. And then it'll give me a narrative, and then I can try to go into my AI software and then type in and try to get an image that's according to the event. So I try to get just 4 images, and if there's a story narrative, like there's a battle, 2 people face off and then one wins or something like that, then maybe I try to get an image of the 2 people facing off. They don't have to look exactly the same, right? And then I have one winning or something, that one's happy and their hands up in the air or something like that. Just a little narrative. So I don't want to go too far to try to tie everything out to the song, and I don't want to be just have it too sloppy, have an image that doesn't tie out to the song at all. I'm going to try to shoot for something in the middle, which will be about 4 images per song, each song being about 3 minutes, therefore each image being on the screen for a minute or so, and then use simple kind of editing, zooming functionality. So that's going to be the strategy we'll use there. So then add MP3 files to the software. Once we have our images and we have our MP3s, we can edit them. I'm going to use Camtasia, but the similar process could be with other software. Put timestamps between each song. So once they're in the editing software, I can put a timestamp between each song to clearly delineate them so that I can print all the songs in one play, or I can basically print each song out or produce each song so that I can add each song to a playlist or create one long playlist. So add 2 to 4 images. We'll put the images on top, then add animation. So once we have the images in place, we can add the animation. I'm just going to use some simple zoom in and out, but I think it's quite effective. We might have some tips that might be useful on that. I'm not saying I'm the editor master, but I edit, I edit accounting videos a lot. So take that for what you will. Export the entire thing, and then you can upload it to YouTube, and we can take our resources, and I'll show you the end result on YouTube, as we saw here, with a little bit more detail about possible SEO kind of discussion. Although, again, I'm not an expert at that either, but I have some common sense thoughts on that. Then copy and paste the YouTube that has the timestamp, song number, song title, meaning we can copy this to the description in YouTube. That's going to be giving us our timestamps that'll allow us to jump to a particular point in the song. Boom, new song, boom, right? So that's the cool stuff. All right, so we have that in the description, and then make a playlist. We can export each song, upload them to YouTube, add the playlist being artful order. Okay, so that's the general process. So that's what we will be doing, and here's the end result. I think it's a pretty cool thing to use for study. If you're a teacher, I would encourage people to use this tool. I personally, and if you're trying to learn anything, I think it's a really interesting way to go about the process. It's a little less dry than just looking at the bullet points. You look at the bullet points and then try to get a song about it. I'll write a song about it. Want to hear it? Here it go.